In the quiet of space, the station drifted among the stars, distant and unreachable. Its gleaming silver surface reflected the faint light of the nearby planet, a cold and lifeless orb floating in the dark. The station had been built for one purpose: to serve as a neutral ground for galactic diplomacy. People from across the galaxy traveled here, seeking peace or sometimes to manipulate it. Captain Evan Mitchell had spent most of his life as a diplomat, moving from one negotiation to the next. He had seen it all: alien species with their bizarre customs, unspoken rules, and complex politics. He wasn't bothered by the cold metal walls or the sterile, controlled environment. This was his world. But there was something about this mission that felt different, something strange hanging in the air like an unspoken tension. Evan's latest assignment was to oversee negotiations between the Tyrellians and the Galactic Council. The Tyrellians were an advanced species, one that had been hidden from the rest of the galaxy for centuries. Their technology was unmatched, and their culture was one of mystery and intrigue. But what had drawn the attention of the Council was not their technological superiority. It was the fact that the Tyrellians were offering a new form of peace, one where both sides would be required to share not just resources but their entire histories, their most intimate knowledge. The Tyrellians had always been cautious, keeping their distance from outsiders. Many had heard of their advanced capabilities, but few had ever interacted with them. Evan, being one of the few humans who had met them face to face, was tasked with handling the delicate negotiations. It wasn't easy. Every word, every gesture had to be carefully measured. It was a slow process, filled with secrecy and political games. And as the days passed, Evan found himself growing weary of the endless meetings and conversations. His quarters on the station were small, but they were a comfortable space, just enough for him to rest between meetings. A desk, a bed, a small window with a view of the planet below, and a few personal items from his past. But tonight, something felt off. The silence seemed too thick, like the entire station was holding its breath. He glanced at the clock. It was late, far later than usual. But still he could hear the steady hum of the station's machinery, the quiet buzz of life continuing around him. That's when there was a soft knock at the door. Evan frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. With a sigh, he rose from his chair, rubbed his eyes, and opened the door. Standing in the hallway was a woman, a Tyrellian maid. She was tall, her features sharp and elegant, with pale blue skin that shimmered faintly in the artificial light. Her long, silver hair was tied back, and her eyes were a striking shade of violet. She was holding a small tray of food, but her expression was unreadable. She stepped forward without a word, her movements graceful yet detached. "Captain Mitchell," she said softly, her voice surprisingly warm yet distant, "I was asked to bring you your meal." Evan stepped aside, allowing her to enter. He had heard about the Tyrellian servants, the ones who tended to the needs of the higher-ranking officials. They were known for their efficiency, but little else. Tyrellians were a reserved species, rarely showing their emotions, and those who served were often seen as little more than tools of convenience. "Thank you," Evan said, taking the tray from her. He glanced at her face, trying to catch a glimpse of any emotion. But she was completely composed. The silence between them stretched, and Evan shifted uncomfortably. "Is everything all right?" he asked, almost absent-mindedly. He hadn't expected to speak to her more than necessary. After all, she was a servant and he was a diplomat. Her violet eyes met his, and for the briefest moment, Evan could have sworn he saw a flicker of something in them. It wasn't sadness nor joy. It was something deeper, something almost hidden. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it was gone. She lowered her gaze to the floor, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I am well," she replied, her voice steady, but Evan could sense the lie. There was something more beneath the surface. He hesitated, then asked, "What's your name?" Her eyes flickered back to him, this time with a hint of surprise. "Kalia," she said softly. "I am Kalia. I serve here." There was a strange sadness in her words, something she wasn't ready to share. Before Evan could ask more, she turned to leave. But then, just as she was about to exit the room, she paused. Her shoulders slumped, and for the briefest moment, Evan caught a glimpse of something fragile in her stance. "I'm sorry," Kalia whispered almost to herself. "I didn't mean to," Evan's curiosity flared. "Kalia," she stood there, silent, her back to him. He could sense that there was more to this woman than the cool, composed servant she appeared to be. She wasn't just a maid, not in the way he had been led to believe. There was something hidden, something that called out for understanding. But she said nothing, her presence fading from the room like a shadow. As she left, Evan sat back down at his desk, the strange feeling of unease lingering in the air. What had just happened? Why had Kalia, the calm, distant maid, shown such emotion, if only for a fleeting moment? The answer, Evan soon realized, would come to him in time. For now, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something far more important unfolding in this station, something tied to Kalia and her people, something he was not yet ready to face. It was only the beginning. Evan couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Kalia's words echoed in his mind. The way she had hesitated before leaving, the way she had almost let something slip, something she hadn't meant to reveal. There was more to her than just a maid. Much more. The next day, Evan's schedule was packed with meetings. He barely had time to sit down, let alone process the events of the night before. But even as he attended to his duties, he couldn't stop thinking about Kalia. Why had she seemed so broken? Why had her eyes shown so much pain, yet she had said nothing about it? The Tyrellians were a mysterious species, and their ways were not easy to understand. But one thing was clear, Kalia wasn't just an ordinary servant. She had been hiding something, and Evan was determined to find out what it was. After his final meeting of the day, Evan decided to take a walk around the station. He needed space to think, to clear his mind. As he strolled through the hallways, the quiet hum of the station was oddly comforting. The walls were lined with sleek, futuristic designs, and everything seemed perfectly in place, sterile, organized, and calm. But beneath the surface, Evan could feel the tension building. He found himself back near his quarters, and as he walked past the corridor that led to the maid's rooms, he saw Kalia again. She was standing by the door, her posture stiff, her face impassive. But the moment their eyes met, something changed. There was a flicker of recognition, a brief moment where she seemed to soften. She nodded to him, but there was an unspoken message in her eyes, something that Evan couldn't quite decipher. "Kalia," he called out, his voice soft but firm. She turned to him, her violet eyes locking with his. She didn't say anything at first, as though she was weighing her options. Then finally she spoke. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, her voice tinged with a quiet urgency. Evan took a step closer. "I've been wondering what's going on with you." His words were gentle but carried an edge of concern. "You're not just a maid, are you?" Kalia's gaze dropped to the floor, her fingers fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. She seemed to be fighting something, battling with herself. I can't explain," she whispered. "It's not safe for you to know." Evan wasn't satisfied with her answer. He couldn't just leave it at that. He had to know more. There was something in the way she spoke, something in the way she carried herself that told him she was hiding something deep, a secret far more dangerous than anything he had anticipated. "Kalia," he said again, his voice softer now. "You don't have to keep it a secret. You can trust me." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of fear and sadness. For a moment, Evan thought she might open up, but instead she took a step back, her expression hardening once more. "I don't trust anyone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not even you." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Evan standing in the hallway, his heart heavy with confusion and concern. What was she hiding? Why couldn't she trust him? That night, Evan couldn't sleep. His mind raced with questions, with theories, none of them making any sense. He had to know the truth, and he was determined to find it, no matter what it took. The next day, Evan made a decision. He would get closer to Kalia, no matter the cost. He couldn't afford to let her slip away again, not when he was so sure that she was involved in something far bigger than he could comprehend. He didn't know how, but he would find a way. Later that evening, Evan's opportunity came. He was leaving a meeting when he spotted Kalia again, this time alone in one of the quiet corridors of the station. Her back was turned to him, and she seemed lost in thought, unaware of his presence. This was his chance. Evan approached cautiously, his footsteps light against the smooth metal floor. He wasn't sure how she would react, but he knew he couldn't just let her walk away. Not now. "Kalia," he called softly, his voice gentle yet insistent. She froze. For a moment it seemed like she might turn and leave, but then she slowly turned to face him. There was something in her eyes, something raw, something fragile. "Why are you following me?" Her voice was tight, filled with tension, as though she was holding herself together by a thread. Evan took a deep breath. "I'm not following you, Kalia. I need to understand. You're not just a servant. You're hiding something, and I can't just let it go." Kalia's expression flickered, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she was trying to decide whether to trust him. For a long moment there was nothing but silence between them. Then she spoke again, her voice trembling. "You wouldn't understand," she said softly, her words filled with sorrow. "No one would. This isn't something that can be fixed. It's too big, too dangerous." Evan felt his heart rate increase. "What are you talking about?" Kalia hesitated, her eyes darting around as if checking for anyone who might be listening. Then in a low voice she spoke again. "My people," she began, her voice shaky. "The Tyrellians, we've been hiding for so long. The truth is, we're not just a peaceful species. We've been running from the empire that has enslaved us for generations, the empire that controls everything." Evan took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you mean? Why are you working here then? Why are you pretending to be just a maid?" Kalia's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to show any weakness. "Because it's the only way we can survive," she whispered. "We serve them, we stay quiet, we do what they tell us, and we pray that one day maybe we can be free." Her voice broke on the last word, and for the first time Evan saw the full weight of her pain. It wasn't just the pain of a servant. It was the pain of a people who had been crushed, beaten down, and made to forget their history. "I'm sorry," Kalia said, looking down at the floor. "I didn't want you to know, but now that you do, I don't know what will happen." Evan felt a wave of determination wash over him. He couldn't ignore what he had just learned. The Tyrellians were in trouble, Kalia's people were in trouble, and he had to do something about it. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said firmly. "I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll help you. We'll find a way." Kalia looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "You would help us," Evan nodded. "I don't know what I can do, but I won't just stand by. You and your people deserve more than this." For a long moment, Kalia just stared at him as if she couldn't believe what he was saying. Then slowly she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. And in that moment, Evan knew that this was just the beginning. The journey ahead would be difficult, dangerous even, but he was ready. He would fight for Kalia and her people. He had to. There was no turning back now. Evan's mind raced as he walked back to his quarters. The weight of Kalia's words hung heavy in the air. She had confided in him about her people's oppression, their endless struggle to remain hidden from the empire that had controlled them for generations. The feeling of helplessness in her voice was undeniable, and yet, despite everything, she had placed her trust in him. But how could he help? He was just one man, a diplomat who had spent his life navigating politics and treaties. He wasn't a soldier or a spy. He had no special skills for fighting, no connections to resistance movements. And yet, as he looked out the window of his quarters, the stars seeming to twinkle mockingly in the distance, he knew he couldn't ignore what Kalia had shared with him. He had to do something. Over the next few days, Evan kept his distance from the Tyrellian leadership, avoiding their meetings and formal gatherings. He needed to think, to plan. He knew the empire that controlled the Tyrellians wouldn't let them go easily. If they found out that someone was trying to help them, the consequences would be severe. The empire was ruthless, and they would stop at nothing to crush any resistance. But Evan couldn't just walk away. He had promised Kalia that he would help. And he intended to keep that promise, no matter the cost. The following evening, Evan arranged to meet with Kalia in a quiet, secluded corner of the station. The moment he saw her, his heart skipped a beat. She looked different now. Her usual calm and composed demeanor had been replaced by a subtle tension. She was nervous, but there was also a spark of determination in her eyes. She had made a decision. "I've been thinking about what you said," Kalia began, her voice low and cautious. "You're right, I can't keep hiding forever. We need to take action or we'll lose everything." Evan nodded. "But we need a plan, we can't just confront them head-on. They'll crush us before we even get started." Kalia glanced around, making sure no one was watching, and then leaned closer. "I've been working on a way to get the information we need. The Empire keeps detailed records of all their operations, including their hold over the Tyrellians. I've been trying to gather some of it, but it's been difficult. They keep everything locked down tight." Evan's mind began to churn as he thought about what she was saying. If they could expose the Empire's control over the Tyrellians, it might spark a rebellion, or at the very least, force the Galactic Council to take action. The Empire couldn't be allowed to keep controlling an entire species. But how could they get the information? "I can help you," Evan said, his voice steady. If we work together, maybe we can find a way to get what you need. We don't have much time. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. Kalia nodded. I know, that's why I've been gathering a few allies. There are others like me, Tyrellians who are ready to fight. We're not alone in this, Evan. There's a network of us scattered across the station. But we need a safe way to access the Empire's records. If we can do that, we can expose them. Evan felt a surge of hope. This was it. This was the break they needed. If they could get the evidence, they could turn the tide. The Empire wouldn't be able to hide their crimes any longer, but just as quickly as the hope appeared, doubt crept in. Could they really do this? Was it possible to outsmart the Empire to uncover their secrets without being caught? Evan didn't have any answers, but one thing was certain. He couldn't back down now. We'll need a distraction, Evan said after a long pause. Something big enough to draw attention away from what we're doing. If we can cause enough chaos, we might be able to slip past their defenses and access the records. Kalia nodded, her eyes narrowing with thought. I have an idea. It's risky, but it might work. There's a high-ranking Tyrellian official on the station, one who has access to the Empire's most classified information. If we can get close to him, I can extract the data we need. Evan's heart raced. This was it. They had a plan. They could do this. We'll need to be careful, he cautioned. One wrong move and we're done for. The Empire won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens them. Kalia met his gaze, her eyes filled with determination. I know the risks, but I'm ready to fight for my people, Evan, are you? Evan nodded without hesitation. I'm in, let's do it. The two of them spent the next few hours strategizing, going over every detail of the plan. They had to be meticulous. Every step had to be calculated, every action timed perfectly. They couldn't afford to make any mistakes. If they did, the consequences would be dire. That night, Kalia and Evan set their plan into motion. As they moved through the darkened corridors of the station, Evan couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline. This was the first time in years that he felt truly alive, truly involved in something that mattered. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about freedom, about fighting for a species that had been oppressed for far too long. They reached the high-ranking official's quarters just as planned. Kalia, her movements swift and precise, disabled the security systems, allowing them to slip inside unnoticed. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension. They knew they didn't have much time. Kalia moved quickly to a console in the corner of the room, typing in a series of commands. The screen flickered to life, revealing the classified records they had been searching for. Evan's heart raced as he watched the data unfold before them. This was it, the evidence they needed to expose the Empire's control over the Tyrellians. But just as they were about to download the information, the door to the room suddenly slid open. Evan's heart stopped. A tall figure stepped inside, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. It was the high-ranking official, and he had caught them in the act. "What are you doing here?" the official demanded, his voice cold and threatening. Kalia stepped forward, her eyes flashing with defiance. "We're here to free my people. You can't stop us," the official sneered. "You think you can just waltz in here and expose everything? You have no idea what you're up against. The Empire is invincible." Evan took a deep breath, his mind racing. They had to act fast. "Maybe the Empire is invincible," he said, his voice steady, "but it's not infallible, and neither are you." With a swift motion, Evan lunged toward the console, slamming his fist onto a button that triggered the data download. At the same time, Kalia grabbed the official by the arm, twisting it behind his back in a move that stunned him. The official let out a gasp of pain but said nothing. As the download completed, Evan and Kalia exchanged a brief glance. They had done it. They had the evidence. Now they just needed to get out of there. Without another word, they turned and fled, the sound of the officials' shouts fading behind them as they ran down the corridors. They didn't stop until they reached a secure area where they could hide and transmit the data to the Resistance. As the data was sent out to the galaxy, Evan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had done it. The Empire's secrets were no longer safe. The truth was out there, and there was no going back now. Kalia stood beside him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and hope. "We did it," she whispered. Evan nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "We did it, and now we fight for your people." The battle was just beginning, but for the first time, Evan felt like they had a chance.